confused as movements that hate men. Far from it. Equality movements are about involving everyone. It's about ending gender inequality and disparities between however you identify and in what gender you identify. So many people, especially with all the women's rights movements at the moment, and I've been like always vocal about being feminist and not even fitting into, there's also a stereotype about feminists. We always think of any kind of group, I guess, if we're going to call it that, as the absolute extreme, the evangelical, the ones who are kind of like overtly anything, it doesn't matter what cause they're fighting for, it's always to the extreme that we stereotype people, or the worst case we've ever discovered, or something one feminist once said that was awful. And actually, we need male allies. We need men to be part of the conversation, but also the changes. They're the privileged community, the privileged sex, unfortunately. And it's about actually ending that disparity. But without getting men on board, it's a lot harder to move forward, because unfortunately, it's still mainly men in high profile positions. It's still mainly men who are change makers. And actually, when we're doing movements, we need to do it together. It's not about hating other sexes at all. Far from it. I'm trying to stop myself saying I have lots of male allies and male friends, but I genuinely do. And two of the biggest feminists in my life were my dads. So like my dad and my two stepdads. And actually, they were like really strong feminists about women's rights and actually equality, because I was brought up with my sister. I've now got my own two daughters, and it's not about hating anyone. It's about getting up, getting ready, to face the world and making the world equal. So in light of all the tragic circumstances at the moment, and it feels like we take one step forward and then 1,000 back, and then actually go, we've just become better at covering it up and doing the odd initiative. But it's not enough, because this is where change makers need to actually be fully on board, not just spouting off what they feel like they should in these times. It's actually about making changes, learning from past errors. It's not about beating anyone up or saying, oh, because I'm feminist, I hate men. No, not at all. That's far from it. And I don't blame every single man. I don't blame the privileged sex. But what I do want to do is I'm fierce about women coming together, joining together, but also to have male allies, because actually, if we are going to move forward, we need male allies to actually help us progress. We need male allies to actually make some of the changes. And actually, they've done lots of research to show that even in workforces, if you just have a kind of single gender movement of women, it's a lot harder to create change within that environment, within that network. Whereas when you're engaging with men as well, often that's part of the battle, is changing all of our stigma. So I'm involved in lots of women's groups, previously physically in the community and also online, and I've got my own Squats and Sparkles group on Facebook, and I work with so many women in business, all sorts of areas, and I think most of us pretty much agree that men are part of this change and vital to making these changes. And when we talk about equality, some people get turned off and think, oh, it's just people harping on again about equality. But until you've been part of any underprivileged community, whether that be with my own ethnicity or disabilities or sex, it's really hard to understand just how much discrimination you face daily. And to be honest, because you're brought up in it, even though luckily I had amazing parents, like a really strong mum, who was also a really proud feminist and still is, and same with my dad's. But society, without realizing it, we take on board all these different issues, we take on board all these different, well, bits of rubbish, really, I was going to swear then. And then without knowing, we even conform, even people like me who are quite strong-minded now about being who I want to be, not just trying to fit in. But that's taken until my early 30s for me to get here. And even I kind of sometimes look back, even in recent times, and question myself and think, actually, I was just conforming without realizing to the status quo. Sometimes we feel like, oh, we're going against the grain, but still many parts of us have been so used to all these underlying messages. Obviously, I have my own serious traumas and stories, where I'm sure many people would say, well, you have every right to hate men. But I don't at all, far from it. I talk passionately about women because I am a woman and I know how much stigma you face as women. But that doesn't mean that I don't think men face stigma, and I think they face stigma in a very different way. But at the end of the day, when it does come to women's rights, men are the privileged community. And it's not about attacking men at all. It's about working together actually to create change. And I think sometimes whilst I'm passionate about single sex or communities so that you can share in a certain way, at the same time, there is no point at staying in your echo chamber. There is no point at just spouting off in your little echo chamber. Granted, it's good. We all need to like offload sometimes, don't get me wrong. But when it comes to actually creating those changes, actually being part of the change, actually living the change we want to see in the world, then we have to involve men in women's rights. And we do anyway, but I think so many people don't fully understand feminism or equality and think it's like so and so against so and so, or this race against this race, or this. No, it's about actually making the world fairer for everyone, because at the moment the world is very unfair, and certain communities, much more than I've ever faced, face some awful stigmas. Obviously I give it from my personal experience because that's all I can do. I can't speak for other people, but that's why I originally went into journalism as well, to give a voice to those communities. Journalism that came from the community out, not from me going, and this is what I perceive of this community, because it's very hard. Like, you can do your best to do balanced reports and whatnot, but at the end of the day, it's those authentic voices, which is why I always talk about my own experiences and harp on about my experience as a woman, a young mum, mixed race, born in a very underprivileged community, and how I've started to make my way through disability and mental health. It's not because I feel like woe me at all. It's because I feel like, well, I'm lucky enough to have a voice, and to have a platform now online, and in the media, to actually share my voice, because I didn't hear enough experiences and enough voices like mine. Not saying they'd all be the same. Don't mean just because you're from one community that you all say the same things and believe the same things. But just hearing a diversity of experiences, seeing a diversity of backgrounds, hearing so many different voices, which is why I love being challenged as well. Granted, I don't like being trolled online, but you know, if I'm having a discussion, I studied philosophy and Italian at uni. It was all about discussions and analysing arguments and situations, and learning and growing. And I'm always prepared to learn. I learn every single day. So I'd love to know your thoughts. We'll be chatting all about that and more on Sparkle Up North. And that's a new women's magazine up north in the north of England. That I've started with a co-editor, fellow sports journalist, someone who is a big football fan like me, Amy Downs, and that is for female leaders up north, because women often don't embrace the fact that they're leaders. They downplay what they do. But again, we need male allies within that. Squats and Sparkles, we have male allies to help deliver. And it's all about including everyone, however they identify, whatever their gender they identify, in the discussion about equality, so that we can all move forward, because we need everyone to buy in as much as possible. Granted, there's people who just like to stay and chunter in their own echo chambers, and bigots often won't be prepared to challenge themselves, but we accept that. But at least we've tried to involve everyone as part of the conversation. So you can chat to me on social at Mama May Blog, and you can find the new magazine at Sparkle Up North too. And then I'm gonna spray my hair and get going for the day, because we've got a busy day before the school runs. So have the most amazing day. Sending you so much peace, love, and shimmies.